Okay, right. Well, welcome to the June virtual Sky Notes from LAS. Details are on the website in normal manner. If you want to read up on the Sky Notes, please go to the website on the screen and do so at your leisure. So here we have the sky map for June. This is a whole sky view and about midnight, mid-month. And as you can see, I shall use my cursor this month to explore the screen. So we have, in the south, we have Sagittarius, which will be the main feature of my presentation this evening, with a few interesting objects down here. We have Jupiter and Saturn making an appearance after midnight, and they'll get more readily available throughout the month. So we have the familiar constellations of the summer sky, which is Cygnus, Lara, and Aquila. Here, and the three stars, Deneb, Vega, and Altair, forming a summer triangle. In the west, we have the last remnants of the spring sky, which is Leo, which is setting after midnight, and Virgo down here. The bright star Arcturus is easily recognizable. It's the brightest star in the northern hemisphere, and you can find that quite easily by following the tail of the plough around. The tail of the plough round to find Arcturus, and extending that further to find Spica. Points of interest this month include a couple of comets. One which is raising some headlines at the moment is Comet Swan, which is right into the northern aspect of here, near Capella. And we also have a fainter comet moving through the plough over the next few weeks, which I'll come on to in a minute. That's Pan-STARRS Comet 2019 T2 Pan-STARRS, which is much fainter. So here's a general aspect, as we say. Okay, so this is what you should be familiar with, most of you anyway. We've been familiar with the sky for the summer sky. Here we have Square of Pegasus rising in the northeast, as it were, and obviously Capella is a star which is circumpolar, it doesn't set, scraping the northern horizon. So if I move on to the next presentation, this is more detail looking south at midnight. The main point of interest here is the bright star Antares, which is an orange-red color star. Antares is reckoned to be the rival of Mars, so it gives you an obvious reference point of the color there. We also have, as I say, the constellation of Sagittarius, which is just visible from the UK over the next month or two. I shall mention the teapot, and here is the asterism at the bottom of the screen here, where we have, it looks like an old-fashioned teapot with a handle here. Here's the teapot, and here's the spout here. And the Milky Way is the steam from the spout, as it were, moving up here through constellations into Cygnus up here. So this is where the Milky Way lies. So if you've got binoculars, this is a good point, and a darker environment. You can have a really good time to look at some of these nice star clusters and star clouds in the Milky Way. One double star I shall mention is Isar, which is in the constellation of Bootes here. And I've suggested that a 60mm refractor at times 120 should be able to split Mizar quite easily. It's a rival to a very well-known star of Albario in Cygnus. Scutum is a very obscure constellation. It's just below Cygnus here. Is this constellation down here. So if we move into this area here past Aquila, you'll see some very nice star fields here, very rich areas of Milky Way. Worth a look with binoculars, certainly. And there's a few interesting objects like M11, which is a nice cluster in the region here. Jupiter and Saturn rise after midnight, as I said earlier. So they're very low down in this year. So not quite easily to see some of the features, but worth a look anyway. So if we look at the west, by midnight, we've lost some of the constellations that we've been familiar with over the last few months. We've still got Leo here, and Virgo, as I've said before, up here. So this is a reference point really to become interested in what's happening in the east and the south of the sky, really more than the west after midnight. Comet T2 Pan-STARRS, I'll mention in a minute again. There's an updated newsletter 224b. It is a telescopic object at night's magnitude, which means it's extended. It's an extended low surface brightness object. So when you say night's magnitude, it's like if you took a night's magnitude star and expanded it by defocusing it. That's how bright the thing would be. So it's very difficult, actually. I've tried. It is very difficult. Okay, so throughout the month, we've got the new moon on the 21st of June, first quarter on the 28th, full moon on the 8th, last quarter on the 13th. This month's new full moon is called Strawberry Moon. It's just a name, really, basically. But and the summer solstice occurs on June the 20th at 22:44 BST. This marks the point where the sun is most northern at point in it to us. So this is our maximum daylight hour day, as it were, minimum twilight or minimum length of twilight. In fact, during months of June, astronomical twilight doesn't really stop, so we never really get into a darker sky. We've mentioned before, summer constellations are now visible. Summer Triangle, as I mentioned before. Okay, so we'll move on quickly because I know the time's moving on. So looking north at midnight, this is really the difficult part, where we have interesting things to look at, but very difficult conditions to find them. We have Comet Swan, which is low in the north at midnight, and it is brightened up quite a lot. You'll see the details in newsletter 245. It is binocular, I understand, in twilight, but it's a difficult object. Magnitude 5.5 to 6.3. It's a fuzzy patch. Coma its diameter is about 5.8 arc minutes, so it's not a star-like point. It's a fuzzy patch. In twilight conditions, it is challenging, I dare say. It's for most people, and certainly in the town, it's quite difficult. So coming on to some comets, we've got, obviously I mentioned before, T2 Pan-STARRS. It's moving south again now through some major, through the plough. It's passing by the bright star Dubhe and heading towards Fire down here during the course of the month. And as I say, the newsletter 222b gives you all the information you need for that. It might be worth imaging more than observing visually, because it is an extended object. At night's magnitude, it's going to be tough in twilight. Hopefully, by the time you read this or get this video, look at this video, then Comet Swan would have perked up a little bit. It's at the moment in late May when I'm recording this, obviously. It's around here. It's on this part of Perseus, and by the time we get to the end of the month and the 1st of June, it's right close to Capella, which is a good signpost to pick it up from. Do have a go for it. It is quite a challenging object, I think, but it's worth having a look at. As I say, 5th magnitude 5.5, so it's possible with a pair of binoculars, I think, or small telescope. I've put this in as a placeholder, as it were. Skylight magazine mentions that, and BA mentioned that IRAS is actually at opposition on the 28th of June. It is 8.8 magnitude. It's a tiny star-like object, obviously, and you can see, just more of interest really, you can see how throughout the course of June the comet, the asteroid rather, moves across the field of view. And this is really low down in the south. It's in Sagittarius. We're just above the Teapot asterism, in fact, and the marker might be defined M25 and track down south from that. There is a newsletter which will come out, which will be newsletter 247. This one I put in just for a bit of fun, really, I guess. If you've ever thought of looking for Pluto, then this might be a good opportunity, perhaps. Throughout the end of June, Jupiter tracks in retrograde across this field of view. It's this telescopic field of view here, and you'll see the dates here, 23rd to the 29th of June. So if you find Jupiter in your field of view in a telescope, 21 centimeters or larger, with a magnification of about times 56, you'll see on a wide angle field that the stars at the bottom of the field will be one of those. If you could get down to 14th magnitude, which is unlikely, but if you could, then you'd be looking at Pluto. But either way, if you can find the field of view, you can legitimately say that you've actually looking at Pluto at some point. So a bit of fun. The featured constellation this month is Sagittarius, because it's only glimpsed at this time of the year for very few weeks. So we have the asterism called the Teapot, as I mentioned before. Here's the steam coming out the spout. Lots of nice clusters to look at in the rich Milky Way field here. You can see that some of these objects are relatively bright. This is the 10th magnitude. So again, it's a challenging thing in twilight. But if you've got no moon around, worth having a good look for those. Here's the plot for the asteroid Iris. You can see how it moves across that field of view. We mentioned that before. Here's Jupiter and Saturn. They're really down south in a constellation of borderline between Capricorn over here and Sagittarius here. So not really well placed from the UK. I've produced this so you can look at it in your own time, and this is news from newsletter 199, which I'm also copying out this month as well. And this is a binocular favourites list of bright star clusters in Sagittarius, and there's a little map to go with it here. And this is just really by reference of what you can see by scanning up this region of the Milky Way. So do have a look at that. So planets in June. Mercury will be visible for the first week in June, and then it'll be gone. It reaches maximum elongation early in June on the 4th. It is in twilight. It's quite difficult, binoculars show it quite well. About 30 minutes after sunset, have a look for that in the first week in June. It's moving so fast over a few days that the phase changes quite rapidly throughout the month, that period of time. So if you've got a telescope, have a look at that as well. Jupiter returns to late evening skies, low in Sagittarius. It's heading towards opposition next month. So in fact, it's getting a little bit brighter and a little bit bigger. And you can see that by the apparent diameter increasing throughout the month here. And it's rising earlier and earlier each evening. So by the time we get to the end of the month, it's not so bad. It's not too late for you to have a look at. But you do need a good southern horizon, southeastern horizon. Likewise, Saturn's tracking behind it from Capricorn into Sagittarius in retrograde. Again, it's opposition next month on 20th. Telescopic observations. If you look at the rings before and just after opposition dates, this is a Seelinger effect, which is a ring brightening. It's to do with the orientation of dust particles as we see them in the ring system. So it's worth having a look at that around that time of before and after opposition, and you can see by comparison that Jupiter is considerably brighter than Saturn. Well, Mars is also coming into view, but it's really an early morning object. It's heading towards opposition later in the year in October. At the moment, it's in Aquarius, and it's getting steadily brighter and a little bit bigger as in apparent size and diameter throughout the month. But the real thing is it'll be part of the main thing will be in the autumn sky for Mars. So we'll come on to the calendar for the month. There's a few interesting things happening for everyone, as it were. Comet Swan obviously is close to Capella on the 1st of June. You need a good northern horizon, but do have a go for it and look at it if you can, binoculars or telescopically. If you've got a camera, maybe it'll pick up on camera as well, but it is really a challenging object in twilight. Lunar observers, reference been made in the Sky at Night magazine to these clear obscure effects, which are shadow details on the moon due to the low angle of sunlight on various features. And you'll see that on the 2nd of June, Cassini's Moon Maiden is featured, which is like a curve of raised areas or on a corner of a mountain range overlooking one of the mare, and it looks like effectively a maiden looking out in silhouette across this this feature here. So Venus is inferior conjunction on the 3rd, which means it's almost in line with the Sun. So it's very it's out the way. You can't look at it. But actually it's very thin crescent coming up to that point. But you need a specialist knowledge to look for that, and I wouldn't suggest anything for members to look at. Be very mindful of looking at anything in the daytime sky. The 5th of June we have full moon, which is a strawberry moon. Lunar illusion obviously at moonrise about 21:03 BST. Just a bit of fun really, have a look at that. Mercury elongation on 4th, and then on the 5th we have a penumbral lunar eclipse, which is nothing really to get excited about too much. 44% of the moon is emerged into the outer shadow cone or penumbra, so it looks a bit washed out. Perhaps it really starts well before moonrise. So in fact, when it's visible from our UK horizon, above our UK horizon, it's already in eclipse, and it recovers to its normal full moon brilliance, as it were, by 22:04 BST. If you're really up early on the 12th of June and you're really keen, then there is a lunar occultation of Tau Aquarii, a 4.1 magnitude star. It disappears behind the bright limb of a first quarter moon, I think, or last quarter moon, yeah. At 03:22 BST, and it reappears from the dark limb, effectively 04:21, which is when it's getting bright. The twilight ends by that time or whatever. So it's really difficult to do it this time of the month. Last quarter on the 13th, Comet Pan-STARRS tracks through the bowl of the Ursa Major's plough, as it were, close to the star Fad on the 15th of June there. If you are out in the morning sky, looking at the morning sky, then Mars is obviously there to look at, and it gets quite close at 1.7 degrees from the planet Uranus. So if you're really keen to have a look at the two together, binoculars should them quite well, I would imagine. It's a bit of a challenge though. Uranus is getting in the bright sky. It's quite difficult. June the 19th is a daytime lunar occultation of Venus. Details are shown in the Sky at Night magazine. A word of caution: it is in the daytime sky. It is difficult, and it's not that far away. It is sufficiently safe to be. It's been wait from the sun to be safe, but it is something to be cautious of. June the 20th, summer solstice, as I mentioned before. June 21st is an annular solar eclipse visible from Africa and Asia. This is when you get a total eclipse, but not complete coverage. There's a ring of bright light around the moon, as it were, and you get this annular ring forming an annular eclipse. It is not visible from the UK. 21st is also new moon, as you would expect from a lunar eclipse. 22nd, a very thin crescent moon, 2.65%, low in the evening twilight. 23rd, the crescent moon, and the the open cluster M44 Precipice in the twilight zone, as it were, in the evening sky. 23rd, Jupiter and Pluto conjunction. That's my little bit of fun for the month, as it were. There is a newsletter 249 on that one. You would need a large telescope or some means of imaging that field to actually pick up the Pluto. June 25th, waxing crescent moon is close to Regulus. There is a meteor shower in June, believe it or not. The June Boötids. The maximum zenith rate is not specified. It can peak, apparently, but it occurs between June the 22nd and July the 2nd, peaking on the 27th. First quarter moon, which is good to look at telescopically, on 28th of June. And we have opposition of asteroid 7 Iris, as per newsletter 247 on the 28th. Bear in mind that astronomical twilight is constant throughout June and early July, so the sky never quite gets as dark as you might hope. Very difficult to observe this time of the year, and of course, but because the sun is only less than 18 degrees below the horizon during that time, there is a possibility of picking up these very high altitude clouds, which are noctilucent clouds. If you look in the northwest from about 90 minutes to 120 minutes after sunset, or again, if you're up early, northeast, 90 minutes to 120 minutes before sunrise, there's a window there of opportunity if they're around. And then what you might see is these fantastic electric blue high-level clouds. Something to worth to look for during the month. And I think that's again. So if you've got any inquiries or anything regarding the notes or whatever, please drop them onto the contact form on the website. And you can also refer to things on the website for updates. The website is on the screen there. Also, details of forthcoming Zoom events and webinars, etc., via TMAP will be circulated. So do enjoy the night sky when you can. Stay safe, and we'll do this again next month, hopefully.